Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I'm the Dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine and the host for the Dean's Chat podcast. Once again, I am joined by my co-host, Dr. Jensen and Richey. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Jeff. How you doing?
I am doing fabulous. How's your weekend?
Oh, man, I had an awesome weekend. I have a little bit of my sexy voice today because I was screaming and singing along at a music festival all weekend. So hard to beat that.
Who are the headliners?
The headliners, the Killers were the second night, and headliner for the first night was Fall Out Boy. Oh. So excellent shows. Some of my favorites, if we're going to go down a quick highlight, the Kills were outstanding. Big shout out to Jack White. And then the Black Keys, overwhelmed. So we'll talk later about music, I'm sure, but Black Keys is a special band to my heart. So they were absolutely phenomenal.
I love it. I was back in Wisconsin visiting some family and friends. It's great to be back in Arizona, 73 degrees, Des, just like in Florida. I'd like to introduce our guest. I'm super excited about this episode, Dr. Desmond Bell. Welcome to Dean's Chat.
Jeff, it's long overdue in terms of we've been trying to nail this down for a while, but thank you so much for having me, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion today with you and Joe and everybody in the audience for that matter.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. And Dr. Bell, we go with first names on Dean's Chat. We're fairly informal. If it's good with you, let's go Des and Joe and Jeff.
Yeah, by all means, please.
All right, I'll kick it off then. Des, we've been good friends, colleagues for many years, did lots of research together. Like you said, back and forth, trying to get this Dean's Chat going. So what I wanted to start out with, usually we talk about, the beginnings and how you found out about podiatry, but let's just jump right into Save a Limb, Save a Life, because when I think of Save a Limb, Save a Life, I realize you're the founder. You gave it the runway to get started, and it's helped so many patients over the years. Congratulations on that first and foremost, but how'd you come up with Save a Limb, Save a Life?
You're going to get a kick out of it. I literally was sitting at my kitchen table working on a presentation one night many years ago and drinking a cold beer, and the name Save a Leg, Save a Life popped into my head out of thin air, basically. Now, taking a step back, I just remember said, I got to do something with this term. I was already well into my practice, and in Jacksonville, Florida, where I had a freestanding wound center, in a mobile service too, mind you. So we had a continuity of care model before it was really heard of. But the point is that, we had started doing some teaching within the community. And when I say teaching, I used to have students rotate through my clinic, whether they were nursing students, physical therapy from University of North Florida, and then home health agency nurses too. And we kind of got this idea, just watching what patients were going through and some of the key, let's say, mistakes in care that were being, rendered to the patients. As an example, not knowing how to do good vascular assessment or even how to put a bandage on properly, just seeing, an Unu boot, let's say. So the idea was, okay, we've got to start educating our fellow providers, people who are doing wound care out in the community, because, there's too much of a blind spot in what's going on, and people are getting hurt. So let's, in a non-adversarial way, let's start bringing people together. And so we came up with this idea of really doing a lunch and learn on wound care. And so we invited, I think it was 10 directors of nursing of local home health agencies in Jacksonville, and just talked about things such as negative pressure, skin substitutes, which at the time was Applegraph, and even some basics. And after that 1 hour session, everybody loved it. And they said, can we do this again? And the thing snowballed, and it became sort of like a grand rounds in a sense. But before you knew it, we were having dinner meetings and inviting, doctors wanted to come, and it really became a community effort. And it was somewhere at that point, we weren't called Save a Leg, Save a Life, but we were just sort of like the Wound Care Consortium of Jacksonville. But eventually I took that name that I had written down on the napkin, literally, and said, why don't we call our little group the Save a Leg, Save a Life foundation. I knew nothing about nonprofits, by the way. So just kind of doing stuff on the fly, and learned about the 501c3 nonprofit world, a lot of trial and error. And, as the things started to progress, though, I went back to the whole idea of watching what my patients were going through. That was really the driving force of it. And we've heard David Armstrong when he published, the 5-year mortality rates with all the different cancers. Well, years ago, I had lost a sister to Hodgkin's disease, and Hodgkin's is one of the 5-year mortality rates that was always included in that, as was breast cancer. But watching what my patients were going through, it kind of clicked with me. It's like, what they're going through with their families too. It's like seeing the same thing and reliving it, what we went through as a family with my sister. So I was like, I want to dedicate this to her memory too. And so that was really the driving force, the impetus. And just realizing that, okay, we've got technology in wound care that is being underutilized. And we've got, breakthrough technologies in vascular medicine too, that people don't know about and are pushing back on at the time. So going back, this is probably around the mid 2000s, 2010, let's say. And, endovascular procedures have started to break out a little bit, but there was still pushback. It's like, okay, these people have no other option. So why are people fighting this? And so again, our idea was, let's bring a multidisciplinary approach as a medical community, but to better serve the members of our community, our friends and family. And that's really the idea of how Save a Leg, Save a Life came about. And over time, using those principles of education and outreach, that's really what it's all about. So that's kind of the origins of the organization.
That's so cool that you were getting together in small groups.
Oh yeah.
Joe, it reminds me of the Walk with a Doc program we were highlighting recently, where you give a spiel to a group of interested people, and in that case, they were going for a walk. But it sounds like in those early days, you're right, the multidisciplinary team is so important, but it wasn't easy to put everybody together. So kudos to you.
The thing that really got, looking at those stats again, we're referring back to the 5-year mortality rates, and then in particular about the breast cancer 5-year mortality rate, and saying, wow, there's so many more people that are dealing with diabetes in our country, and then seeing the mortality rate being so much worse, and saying, okay, why is it that what we treat every day is kind of swept under the rug, yet breast cancer has become, it's been impacted in a positive way because of the pink ribbon, and because people now do self-examinations or they do buddy checks. It's like, we have so many more people who have, again, diabetes than have breast cancer, but nobody knows about what we do and what, the all the bad things that go with a diabetic foot ulcer versus, with breast cancer, and not to marginalize breast cancer by any means. So it's like, we are not getting the word out. We've done a poor job. And to take this to another point, I'd go to a lot of meetings and conferences, and you'd start hearing the same stuff over and over again. And after a while, it's like, guys, okay, we're doing a great job of talking about this amongst ourselves, but we're dropping the ball in terms of getting this out to the people who need to hear the message. So that was a big reason why we decided to really push Save a Leg, Save a Life, and to use, ideas like we came up with the White Sock campaign as an idea to draw attention to the lower extremity in a fun way, but using social media. And my overarching thought on all this is, if we can capture the public's imagination with diabetic foot ulcers, or even with non-healing wounds or amputation prevention, the way the Komen Foundation did, which was a promise from one sister to another, then we'll have done our good deed. But also, if we can get the message to the public, then there's going to be more of an outcry. And why did they just take my leg? Or why didn't they, why wasn't such and such a technology offered? So, we just felt like, okay, get people out of the shadows in a sense, take away some of the stigmas from dealing with diabetic foot ulcers or even diabetes in general. And let's see if we can't start, changing the narrative, but from the public instead of just from a small group of medical specialists, because that's really who's been driving this for too long.
Yeah, that's interesting, Joe. It reminds me of like preaching to the choir at some of the meetings. We're talking to our colleagues and everybody's on the same page, but not everybody else is. Your thoughts on save a leg, save a life? And
yeah, no, I totally agree. And what I really like too is two different things that you had kind of commented on, Des, is the idea of community, as we are all learning how important learning, unfortunately, is something that's been well known, but it just kind of gets easily swept under the rug and kind of forgotten about how important it is in your community to have a multidisciplinary approach, having the option of, if you don't do something or have those particular skill sets in your wheelhouse, that you have someone you can refer to, and vice versa, they can refer back to you. And as we work together, it only improves patient outcomes. And this is across the board in specialties, but even amongst each other in podiatry, we have so many different things that we offer. Sometimes a second opinion from a colleague might be really valuable. Like, look, I've kind of exhausted maybe what I have in my skill set. Let's see what this other person may have that might be help, if there's another option. Because until you really know what the options are, just saying that's it, there's nothing left. And especially when it comes to something that has such serious ramifications as a lower extremity amputation, the functional decline that happens, I feel like it doesn't hurt patients to get as much information as possible before they make those decisions.
Absolutely. And, you don't wish it on your worst enemy, being in the OR, being the one who's done so much of this work. It's like, we can do better. And so that's why the whole advocacy, empower patients to understand, not only they don't have to be experts on the condition, but to have a better idea of their condition and how to better manage it, and what questions to ask, and not just, let's say, just take this for what it's worth. So, okay, your leg needs to be amputated. One of the things that really stuck with me, the things that I've learned along the way, many years ago, Dr. David Ali from Louisiana, who was an interventionist, they had done a study and found that half the amputations done in our country were done without any type of vascular testing. And it's like, how is this possible? It's like, you would not, let's say, do a filling on a tooth without an x-ray. You wouldn't take a woman's breast off without, doing tests. You don't remove body parts but yet it's okay to just go in and just amputate a leg because the doc walks in the room and says, that needs to come off. It's like, hold on a second. Your fate really rests in the hands of who's carrier under. And if it's somebody who's really motivated and understands, like you're saying, all the things that go with amputation, it's not simply sweeping the problem under the rug when you amputate a leg. Now you open up a whole new host of problems. So it's that empowerment through, again, education and advocacy is where we have to really, as a group, we have to keep pushing this.
And I think this is also something that has been kind of, and I love too that your foundation has a deep root in evidence-based medicine, because I also think as we have been looking more at this in the literature, it is supported by this idea of functional pedal amputations can really do, again, we don't want to go that route if we can prevent the wound in the first place and prevent an amputation at all. Yes. However, if it comes to it, there are other options than major amputation below knee or above knee. There are so many other options, again, very case by case, very patient by patient, but to just have the opportunity to have a conversation with our colleagues about what maybe we can help support and provide. And now we have so much more evidence to really back up. Look, yes, what we have been saying is real. We see that, yeah, while amputations overall may be going up, they are digital and pedal amputations, which are much more functional and keep people active, which is the key thing. So I have a question for you. As you guys have been going through this process over the years, what has been the biggest wins that you feel like you've seen as people have come together around this idea?
Great question. I would say that, okay, going back to our White Sox campaign, to see that sort of take off and people, responding to the White Sox idea. And in many cases, they don't even realize it's from our foundation that we started this thing, but it has captured people's imagination, not just here in the US, but internationally too. So that's been a big win. And so that to me indicates that we're going in the right direction with this and that we've started something, but it's still, a lot more needs to be done. So I'd say that that's probably the biggest. And again, people recognize our name too. Um, that's important because I felt that if Save a Leg, Save a Life became a household name, just like the White Sox, it gets people thinking.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what does this mean? And then we have a chance to teach a little bit more and educate.
That's so true, Des. And when I love it on social media when clinics all over the world are putting pictures of their staff and their docs and they're all white socks on. And I think it goes an awful long way.
Oh, Jeff, I just, since we have a minute, I'll just tell you, when we first rolled this out too, we didn't know what to make of it. So I said, all right, we're going to try it in September, which is PAD Awareness Month, which most people had no clue, including vascular surgeons and interventionists. But anyway, I actually put on a white sock over my pants leg, over my scrubs, and walked into my local hospital in Jacksonville. And I barely got through the front door. I'm like, Dr. Bell, are you okay? Did you do something? Did you hurt your leg? And I say, no, but I'm glad you asked. And I said, do you know what PAD is? And before you know it, there's like a little crowd of people around me. And I'm doing this little impromptu teaching about peripheral arterial disease. Well, how do I get tested? What is this all about? And so those teaching moments, that's really where the white sock comes in handy. But probably the most profound thing that hit me from that very first day was I walked around to my, through the hospital wearing a white sock and people are looking at me and everywhere I was walking, people are staring and you feel uncomfortable. It's like, oh my God, I just want to get through your day without anybody noticing you or whatever. But I got into my car and it hit me. It's like, I can take this white sock off now and kind of get back to normal. But imagine being that amputee who has now either lost a leg or the first time they're going to leave the house with a prosthetic leg. It's like they can't undo any of that. And it's like, again, we have to do better with all this. And so, again, those little moments that, I'll never forget in doing this. And I hope other people will kind of really hear this message too, because it is important.
It is, Des, because as you and I have lectured together over the years, there are 2,000 wound care centers. It doesn't matter if they're run by National Healing or Diversified or now Healogics. You've got 2,000 wound care centers. We have all these wound care treatments that have gone through rigorous clinical trials. And then in like 2019, Diabetes Care came out with that study that showed there were increases in amputations, both minor and major. So there's a disconnect there somewhere, exactly what you're talking about. And if we don't have something like the White Sock campaign, what's gonna wake everybody up?
Jeff, it's like I'll never forget. Prior when that paper came out, it kind of validated something that I had been telling people. I said, listen, we better not be patting ourselves on the back about this little temporary drop in amputation rates because most people still have no clue what's going on out here, and eventually we've got this perfect storm that's about to hit with the aging of our population and this steady increase in diabetes. And then having moved to Florida a number of years ago, but the first time I walked around Disney World and looking at the bill, the obesity problem among kids, it's like, this is really, really, guys, this is no time, again, like I said, to be thinking that we're doing such a great job. This is really going to get really serious. And so when that paper came out, it's like, here we go. We have no time to mess around. We've got to figure out other ways to get this, message out so people will become proactive instead of reactive through all this.
I not to dominate the conversation here, Joe, but I thought it was a wake-up call to all of us in the wound care industry, if you will, whether you're a provider or a company, that we all need to work together. It's a multidisciplinary effort if we're going to give the patient the outcome that we're looking for. And sometimes we forget that, right? I mean, especially when you start talking about the pandemic and, trying to deliver care at home, and only one family member could go into the hospital, and then sometimes no family members could accompany the patient into the doctor's room. I mean, communication is so important, and that the relationship between the docs and the nurses and the patients, we lost a little bit of that. So I think people are aware of it now, but I think we should put our foot on the gas on the White Sock campaign.
Thank you for all that. Completely agree. And here we are. So, one of the things too, Jeff, when that paper did come out too, it struck me. It's like, okay, when I was a resident, so like mid 90s, let's say 95, 96, around then, and I did my first year training at the VA in Philly, I remember reading up and figuring out we had about somewhere between 300 and 500 wound care products at that time. We didn't have skin subs. We didn't have negative pressure. We didn't have, alginates were cutting edge. And yet our amputation rates were better then than when that paper came out. And here we are looking, around 2015 was when it really started, the uptick started. So it's like, okay, we've got more technology. We've got better access to these things, but our rates are going up. Now, to me, the biggest red flag in all this was, eventually payers are going to look at this and they're going to say, okay, with all these technologies, now thousands of products on the market, why should we bother paying for advanced wound care? Because it doesn't really make a difference. The amputation rates are going up despite all these technologies. So, it was better back in the mid 90s. That's something to think about.
Joe, it's reminiscent of the conversation we had with Jason Hanft.
Absolutely. And I think there are a lot of conflicting variables that are hard to piece out, of just some talking points. But certainly your point about the payers, I think, is really valid, especially in the current healthcare climate that we live in. Being able to show what value your care is providing, but also being good stewards of the care that we provide. And if something is clearly not working, this is why we document. This is, as we teach our students and our residents, this is why we measure, so that if we are not making incremental progress, we need to start figuring out why. Like, there has to be a reason. And that the interview with Jason Hanft, I think, is really valuable, because sometimes it's like, well, we're checking all the boxes. It must be the patient's fault, right? Which is so easy to just blame the patient. But, and as you even mentioned this, there are so many other things on the other side of the patient that need to be factored into this, right? If you have a patient that lives in a mobile home in the middle of nowhere by themselves, and they have enough arthritis that they can't reach their feet, they're not going to be able to do their wound care, right? Like, that is just a fact. So when we can meet patients where they are and figure out how to bridge the gaps and where the care is lacking, that's again where I feel like we're finally starting to realize how much we've missed, that it's not just all of the things that we do in the office, but there's so much more. And this is the community idea. There's so much more that also goes into taking care of people. When you said Jason,
spot on. I used to beat myself up sometimes when, let's say one patient got well, another one, the wound healed up, and then that third person, let's say, didn't. And it's like, okay, we did the same type of things, same treatments, but those two got better, but this one didn't. What's going on here? What did I do wrong, or what didn't I offer them? I mentioned earlier we had a mobile service. It was called Wound Care on Wheels, and the big eye opener for me was when you actually go into patients' homes and see how they live, and see that's the X factor in all this stuff too. So this is why it's even so much more important that we educate patients on how to be proactive. So, again, we talked about, a breast examination or testicular cancer self-examination, seeing that callus on the bottom of a foot, that to me is like the lump on a woman's breast in a sense. Or just teaching somebody how to, inspect their feet, even if they can't do it physically with a mirror, or they can't bend over. Can they get a selfie stick maybe and put their phone on it? And I used to call that a healthy stick. Or can they get somebody in their household to do the examination? So, these are little things that, again, being proactive, it's so much easier to prevent this stuff than it is to treat it, as we know. And so this is where our focus really should be. It's more, it doesn't get enough, let's say, emphasis on how important it is to teach people to be their own advocate.
And this is, I think, another really exciting space that we're venturing into is now there are more options for technology to help people inspect their feet, know where their personal risk factors are. To again, just validate your comment there, Des. Like, I won't. It's amazing what you learn when you just start talking to patients, and it probably took me way longer than it should have to genuinely just talk to people at where they are. But I remember going through my 10-minute speech about checking your feet, inspecting your feet, what to look for. And then at the very end, thank goodness this guy was just finally willing to be vulnerable. And he said, look, Dr. Richey, I have to tell you something. I can't see. It's like, I never even, like, again, and this, I don't take full ownership of this, but like all of the things that I had just told him were completely moot because he couldn't, like, his eyes were bad, but he didn't want to admit that. And it wasn't in his chart yet. Like, and I hadn't specifically asked, how's your vision? Are you able to see your feet? And like something so small, right? Like if he hadn't done that, I would have missed it. That whole 10 minutes of my time was probably not worth it for him because inside he's just like, yeah, that doesn't apply to me. And so those kinds of, go ahead.
Yeah, no, the student became the teacher at that point too. So.
Yeah, and such a humbling, like I know this as a doctor that, all of these different systems can be affected by diabetes, but at that level, it was probably, I don't know, I was out of residency like 2 years or something. So for 2 years, I had been talking to people. I mean, I don't know exactly how long, and just completely missing the fact that there are some very simple things to make efficient time on their end and on mine. Start with, can you see? Because if not, we're gonna have a different conversation. Then, can you see this? And small things can make a big impact.
So true. So true. But at least you were flexible enough and you, let's say, humble enough in your approach that, well, you didn't take the approach like, oh, this guy doesn't know anything. It's like, I'm the doc here. You did the right thing. And it's like, okay, made you think. And then you kind of altered your approach and you tailored it.
Yeah. And actually, since our podcast is an opportunity for awareness, can you talk a little bit about what the White Sock campaign is for those that maybe are listening and aren't aware? Might be a nice little segue.
Yeah. So the White Sock campaign, really, it's something that we rolled out, again, to create greater awareness towards amputation prevention, especially unnecessary amputation prevention. And when I say unnecessary, meaning, okay, sometimes the amputation needs to be done. We know that. We're not living in this, fantasy land. But did we go through all the steps before making that decision? But the point was, how do we, again, drive this awareness to the general population? And so the idea was, put on one white sock over your pants leg, take pictures of it, and post it on social media. And the hope was that someday it would go viral and then it would start to gain momentum. And again, we began it probably, somewhere, again, probably 20, I don't know, maybe 15, or no, earlier than that. What am I saying? Probably around 2012. But the idea was, let's just, again, draw attention in a fun way, spur people's creativity, and then make it our pink ribbon in a sense. And I think, again, social media is a powerful tool.
Yes.
And this is the way we, disperse education, information, and what a way to do it. And it's really, I think we haven't even tapped into it, but, besides September being PAD Awareness Month, we also got into November for Diabetes Awareness Month, and then April for Amputation Prevention Awareness Month. So we've got this chance to roll it out multiple times a year. And it's just like, the more you post something and the more you throw it out there, eventually people start to recognize it, and that repetition will help drive home the message. So just that's basically it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks
for the forum.
Des, we're talking about, ways that we can increase student recruitment and get students aware of podiatry, and that same concept of the more you see it, the more it will be acknowledged. What'd they say, Joe? Marketing, 7 times they have to see it.
Yes. Yeah.
So, hey, Des, I wanted to shift gears a little bit. You've gone through kind of a midlife work transition. You're working with Omeza now. Are you still in practice, or have you changed? Have you shifted full time?
Yeah, Jeff, it's you talk about the long, strange trip. I just followed, my passion of doing wound care. That's what I love to do. That was the part of podiatry that really spoke to me, and it really hit me in my first year of training in Philly. And I used to make rounds every morning with the docs at the VA from University of Pennsylvania and Medical College of Pennsylvania, Hahnemann, the internists, I should say. And I realized quickly, every time there was a wound on our rounds, on our team rounds, they'd always look to me for answers. And it's like, I'm green at this point. I'm a few weeks out of graduation. And it's like, oh my God, if I don't know this stuff, or the other flip side was, these guys really, the best and brightest, they don't know anything about wound care. They don't understand all this stuff too. It's like, there's a real need for what podiatrists can bring to this. So I immersed myself in it. And my residency director was Ann Sonoga, and Karen Golly, Howard Green. Those were some of my mentors in Philly. But Ann really allowed me to immerse myself in it, attend a conference, and it brought some of those ideas back to our clinic. And that's where I saw how important this really was. So, wound care found me, and then I was able to start my journey. Like I mentioned, established a freestanding wound clinic in Jacksonville, had a mobile service, a real continuity of care model, because I was seeing patients in my office, hospital, SNFs, LTACs, and in the home. And our outcomes were better just because we don't let these people fall through the cracks. Well, anyway, because of my work in wound care, eventually kind of reluctantly got pushed out to the stage or to the podium. And it's like, why do people want to hear what I have to say? And so, but I had, people saying, no, you're doing some really cool stuff here. People need to know about this. It's like, all right, well, I'll show them what I'm doing, and if they're interested. And that's kind of how it began. So in one of my presentations along the way, somebody heard me presenting, and they were from a company based in Sarasota, Florida, that had developed a product to heal, to stop bleeding on contact. And they wanted to see if their product could be applicable to wound healing. So they said, can we come up to your clinic in Jacksonville? It's like, sure, of course, come on up. And so they brought with them a gentleman who I didn't know at the time. And they said, can he shadow you? And it's like, of course, I'm happy to teach him. Just don't get in the way. Well, his name is Chip Bettel. And Chip, turns out, was the inventor of liquid Tide detergent. And again, I didn't know this at the time. And I said, Chip, here's the deal. No matter what wounds look like, they have 3 things in common. No matter what the etiology is, we've got to address 3 things before we can kind of get them moving. So you've got to address the edema, you've got to address the biofilm that's present in the wound, and you've got to address the perfusion, because these wounds generally have some decreased oxygenation to the site. So if somebody could figure out a way to address those 3 things, they'd be onto something. And I figured I'd never see him again. And he said, I'd like to go home and think about this for a couple of weeks. I said, yeah, knock yourself out. And he said, can I come back? It's like, sure. And so this was our journey. We began in 2008. So we began looking at omega fatty acids from fish as a potential anti-inflammatory. But also, I mentioned Chip developed liquid Tide detergent when he was at Procter & Gamble. His expertise was wastewater purification and surfactants. And so if we can start cleaning up the wound without using harsh chemicals or whatever, this is pretty brilliant stuff. And, we can start to move the wound. And so over time, we started working on different ideas. And one day he showed up with a prototype. It was like a paste. And he said to me, "Can we try this on one of your patients?" And I said, "No, you can't just try this on my patients." But I had a good friend of mine who I graduated or had was a college fraternity brother who was a biomedical engineer, and he actually worked at the FDA. And he used to call me periodically to ask me about different wound care products. So I returned the favor one day, and he said, "No, you can try it. Just you're not selling it." And it's like, "No, we're not selling it or doing anything crazy." And I'm, full disclosure to the patients. I said, "I think we have some ideas here that could really make a difference over time." And so that's how we started doing it. And then it was quiet for a few years. And then I guess it was around 2018, Chip reached out to me again, and he said, "Hey, listen, we're forming a company and we'd like you to be part of it." So sat down, listened to what they were saying, and the group of people that they had, assembled. And it's like, these guys are not doing this to fail. So at the end of 2019, Jeff, that's coincidentally when COVID hit. That's when I officially retired from clinical practice and made the move down to the west coast of Florida, where Omeza is headquartered. So the idea was, okay, if this product works, I'll be able to help so many more people on a grander scale than I could one at a time. So that ultimately was my decision. I said, okay, if this crashes and burns and it fails, I'm going to get a hell of a business school education in the process. But if it works, then it's going to be I'll have done my good deed. So that was, no pretense, just let's go have some fun. And, with that, got a chance to really learn how to do more in the research end of things. This past year, we published 8 different articles this past year, doing clinical trials, doing, some of our colleagues presenting, case studies. University of Miami looked at our impact on biofilm too. So it was really exciting. And so that's kind of, when I tell you, I said to Joe earlier, I said, I think the best day of your life really is when you figure out your purpose. And even that, once you figure it out, that doesn't mean you've figured it all out. It's not a linear progression of what happens. There are going to be all sorts of twists and turns in the journey. But as long as you keep in mind that purpose and you stay true to yourself, you have so much fun and you meet so many great people along the way. It's like, look, I would have never met you if I had never delved into any of this stuff. And I could say that about some of our other colleagues too. People become lifelong friends, and that's the real reward. And when I say people, that includes patients. I just love patients reach out to me, stay in touch. So we do touch people's lives, and that should never, you should never lose sight of that, especially, the students who are coming up, just, be true to your calling, and, you will not fail.
Absolutely. Joe, I told you he's a humble, successful guy.
I'm probably talking too much.
No, but like it's also, it really helps give clarity. And I'll switch to I language, but certainly when you talked about purpose, like, it's sometimes hard to figure out, like, what are the things that matter the most to me? Because we get really in the thick of it all, right? And then having those opportunities to just take pause and think, what are the things that really align with what I want from my life and where I really want it to go? And then once you like you said, once you figure that out, the clarity in terms of what you start saying yes to and what you start to realize, yeah, this sounds interesting, but it doesn't align with all these other things. So right now it just has to be a no. That alone, like the relief that it provides to just be like, okay, I can focus now because I know where I'm wanting. And like you said, it doesn't make everything easy and perfect, but it just really, for me, made so much more clarity in terms of where to spend focused energy. Otherwise, you just start to scatter and you burn out, you get exhausted. Or again, I will use I language. I got burned out and I was just spinning wheels, feeling like you're not focusing on any one thing. So everything just starts to get busier and busier and busier, and you cannot do everything all the time, all at once.
No,
right?
It's okay to say no.
Yeah.
But also, you just, that clarity. And I never felt burnt out at all. I mean, I was actually energized by going into my clinic. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, listen, there are days where you feel you're banging your head against the wall. I mean, but I look back and it flew by because I enjoyed what I did so much. Whether it was the challenge in the OR, the patients, we said, there is no blueprint. This is not doing an Austin bunionectomy. This is, you never get perfect anatomy to work with to begin with. But, it's just, I just was so fortunate that I did listen. I followed those little road signs along the way, and they led me to so many things. And I don't think I'm done by any chance, by any means at this point. I see more things are happening. And you don't expect it. You hope for the best. You never know what's coming. But if you stay true to your purpose, have that clarity, don't put extra pressure on yourself. There's no need to, and enjoy the ride too. It can really be a lot of fun. I mean, that's all I can say. It's not for the faint of heart either. Some people are just, they prefer just to kind of follow that path that's already mapped out. But I think, life's too short. And if you have a chance to really, play a little bit, paint, whatever explore some of your creative part in the process, it's so rewarding. So, yeah.
Wow, that is awesome, Des. I'm tempted to stop right now, but I want to hear more about this exciting life. Joe and I often ask a lot of little quick hit questions. And Joe, do we have time for that? We do, don't we? All right.
Yes, most definitely.
All right, Des, I'm going to kick it off. You got a week to go on vacation anywhere in the world. Where are you going?
Italy.
What part?
The parts that I haven't been to yet. I was fortunate the past couple of years. I've been there twice, and I was telling somebody this over the weekend. I said, you got to go, but remember, it's kind of like going to Disney World. You can't do it all in one time, but wherever you go, just be there and soak it all in. And some of the memories that you'll bring back are the things that you could have never planned on, and that's the fun part. So. In my travels, I got to visit Lake Como, Lake Lugano over in Switzerland, got to do Tuscany, Positano, Capri. And so I want to go back. I've been doing Duolingo for a couple of years now, learning it more and more. And I'll tell you what, if anybody questions it, it helps. And if you even make an attempt to speak to the locals, they appreciate it. You have more fun too. So anyway, so I would go to Italy. That's my long-winded answer.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Did that count as a question, Joe, when you asked where?
No, I'll take,
Okay.
well, I don't know.
All right.
You tell me.
No, you go for it. You
Okay.
get another one.
Well, we started talking about music. Let's go top 3 musical bands. You get to pick the music. What are you picking?
That I've seen or that I've followed over the years?
Just your favorites. Like if you could put on some music and do something, what would you put on?
Man, it really depends on what the mood, what mood I'm in. I have such a really kind of bizarre range of musical taste. I mean, I've seen everybody from the Ramones to Elvis Costello several times, the Grateful Dead, Dylan, Springsteen. I mean, I can go on. And most recently, I saw Herb Alpert in the Tijuana Brass. Now, why would you go see this guy? Well, first of all, the man is a legend. Everybody around the world knows who he is. His contributions to music are they're off the charts. But I was also intrigued by saying, this is music that our parents heard. And as a kid, looking through their albums and who's this guy? What's this? And then putting it all together. And it becomes a soundtrack of your life, but not only for movies, television shows, commercials even, but it's like to see somebody 90 years old basically now going up there and can this guy play a trumpet for 2 hours or an hour and a half? Just totally blown away. And it was not piped in music. It was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. What a treat. So yeah, I mean, I love jazz. I went to college in New Orleans, learned to love jazz. Favorite course I took in college was history of jazz. We had an incredible archives at Tulane University where I went.
It's awesome.
But I love blues, love, rock. I love country. So over the weekend, walking through St. Augustine. I was up there for a wedding, walking past this old bar. It's a dive bar called the Trade Winds, which was Jimmy Buffett's favorite bar, by the way. And I used to go in there once in a while when I was living up there, but heard this guy sing, and I said, man, that sounds like Waylon Jennings. And the person was one of the persons in our group said, how do you know who Waylon Jennings is? It's like, just because I grew up in New Jersey doesn't mean I can't. I said, I also love Merle Haggard too. Said, oh, you would have loved my daddy. So you asked me about music, just you name it. Love it. It's good for the soul.
It's awesome.
That is awesome. So Des, I've got one more question for you. When you're not listening to music, what do you do to get away? What do you do to relax? What are your hobbies?
So Jeff, I played men's softball for about 24 years, fast pitch, slow pitch, modified, love that. I was always athletic, but I found my most enjoyable activity. I mean, I love golf too now. I would say, just walking the beach. So when I lived in Jacksonville and in the beaches area, I used to do, I just walk and, I'd do 5-mile walk. Halfway point, there was this area, was a preserve. So there was no homes there. It's called the Guana Preserve area of the beaches. I just stopped and it just hit me one day. It's like, this area is just, this is unchanged. I mean, this is what it looked like millions and millions of years ago. And here I am just standing here looking at the dunes and the water. And it's really kind of a spiritual thing, but I just leave all my problems behind there, meditate, say my prayers and give thanks and just walk back. And I found that to be probably the best activity that I've done over my years. So just walking.
That's awesome. Kind of like a form of meditation a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You slowly feel whatever baggage you were carrying with you at the time. You just leave it behind because you see different things. The beach is different every day. Whatever is washed up on the beach, the people you see, the things that are jumping out of the water, whether it's dolphins or, like I said, sea turtles sometimes, you just never know. So it was just such an amazing little gift and just to be able to experience all that stuff. I just, I bring my phone and take pictures sometimes of sunset or sunrise, or sometimes just the cloud formations, whatever, just absolutely beautiful. And you just kind of, it's like, you talk about humbling. It's like, now that's humbling.
That's awesome.
It's like no man created this stuff.
Oh, that's for sure. Joe, any final words on your end?
No, that was absolutely spectacular. Thank you so much, Des.
Joe, my pleasure. I'd love to buy you both a drink or just chit chat some more. So we'll make it a point when we do connect in person. Let's just, or keep in touch, however you like. So
absolutely.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me today, letting me, go on and on a little bit. And, to the students out there, again, follow your passion. You're in a great position now, and let's, as fellow colleagues, let's see what we can do. Maybe apply some of the ideas from Save a Leg, Save a Life of reaching a grander scale. Maybe that's where we should be looking too. Let's look at the general population and get creative with how we start attracting to some really the best and brightest out there into our profession. Can't imagine where I'd be without podiatry, and I never set out to be there.
Oh, so true. Des, we're going to send you a Dean's Chat cup. That way you can get your morning going with your walks. But mostly I wanted to thank you for all you've done for the profession, for podiatry, for the wound care space. You've helped so many patients, colleagues, multi-specialty groups. I mean, my gosh, your impact has been seen everywhere, and appreciate it for all of our profession. Appreciate it.
Jeff, thanks for the kind words. Back at you. You're a kindred spirit in all this for sure. And you know what? no time, like I said, no time to pat ourselves on the back now. We still have a lot of work to do, but let's enjoy the ride and, just keep at it. We're doing the right things here.
Very much so. Well, to all of our listeners out there, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating. Joe and I always talk about potentially leaving some comments. Des, maybe you can get on and leave a couple comments for us.
Absolutely.
All right, sounds good.
Reviews are great. They help us in the rankings and get, more guests and all of those things.
Yeah, we'll start posting. We'll get that machine going.
All right, sounds good. And then if you're watching on YouTube, by all means, become a subscriber. And Joe and I will continue to bring leaders in podiatry and wound care. And we're so excited about our profession going forward, Des, and you're part of it. So thanks again for all you do. Cheers.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Jeff. Anything I can do along the way, you know where to find me. I'm happy to help you all.
Absolutely. Hey, before we stop, can I ask you a quick question? We're done, right? We'll edit this. When I started the podcast, did I say save a leg, save a life, or did I say save a limb, save a life?
They become interchangeable over the years. And we, there was even a point where we copyrighted or, registered both names or trademarked both names because, people botch it up, but it's okay.
I just didn't want to botch it up. I could do a quick segment over it if I had to.
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, and what could be fun when you said April is Amputation Prevention Month. That's about when we might be close to releasing this. I bet we could get all of the campuses to do a white sock campaign. I know enough people in almost all the campuses, and I know Jeff does too. That could be really fun. Like every day on social media, somebody from a different a student or attending, post a white sock picture to social media.
That's how you get it going.
Yeah.
Make it even have some friendly competition or something.
Yeah.
Get the pets involved.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. I bet we could get some fun stuff happening.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's like I said, that's the fun of it. But then, you keep throwing it out there and it starts to resonate. So.
Absolutely. All right, Des. Appreciate it as always. Great chatting you up as always.
So nice to meet you.
Joe. Nice meeting you too, Joe.
All right.
And keep rocking in the free world.
All right.
Indeed.